Nathan Webb wiped the sweat from his brow as he paused on the narrow ledge, his fingertips raw from hours of climbing. The morning sun beat down on the limestone cliff face of Rattlesnake Canyon, painting the rocks in warm golden hues. At 34 years old, Nathan had been climbing for most of his adult life, but something about this particular route had called to him in a way he couldn't explain. Just another 100 feet, he muttered to himself, reaching for his water bottle. The canyon stretched below him, a rugged landscape of red and tan rock formations carved by millions of years of wind and water. From his perch nearly 200 feet up the cliffside, the world looked different, purer somehow, removed from the noise and chaos of everyday life. Nathan had chosen to tackle this new route alone, something his climbing buddies had warned against. But after 15 years of scaling rock faces across 5 continents, he trusted his skills and instincts more than most. Besides, there was something special about the solitude, just him against the ancient stone. He checked his harness and gear one more time before continuing upward. The next section looked tricky, a slight overhang with limited obvious handholds. Nathan studied the rock face carefully, planning his approach. This was the part of climbing he loved most, the puzzle, the challenge of finding a path where none seemed to exist. Nathan reached up, testing a small ridge with his fingers, not stable enough. He shifted slightly to the right, searching for a better grip. His hand brushed against something unusual, an edge that felt too straight, too perfect to be natural. Frowning, he looked more closely at the section of rock. "What the heck?" he whispered. A thin layer of moss and dirt covered whatever had caught his attention. Curiosity piqued. Nathan pulled out a small brush he used to clean holds and gently swept away the grime. As the debris fell away, his frown deepened. There was definitely something odd about this section of rock. A perfectly straight line cut into the limestone, forming what appeared to be a rectangle about 3 feet high. Nathan's heart began to beat faster, and it wasn't from the exertion of the climb. He brushed more vigorously, clearing away years, perhaps centuries of accumulated dirt and plant growth. The more he uncovered, the more certain he became. This wasn't a natural formation. The edges were too precise, the angles too perfect. "Impossible," he breathed. He was looking at what could only be described as a door embedded in the cliff face, nearly 200 feet above the canyon floor. No trail led here. The location was accessible only to experienced climbers, or possibly by helicopter. Yet someone or something had created this. Nathan secured his position with an additional anchor and pulled out his phone to take pictures. The late afternoon sun hit the rock at an angle, highlighting the door's outline even more clearly. It appeared to be made of some kind of metal, though unlike any he'd seen before. The material had weathered to almost the same color as the surrounding limestone, which explained why no one had noticed it from below. He ran his fingers along the seam where the door met the cliff. No handle was visible, no obvious way to open it. The craftsmanship was remarkable. The door fit so perfectly into the rock that in some places, the seam was barely wider than a credit card. Who would build this? And how? Nathan wondered aloud. The logistics alone were mind-boggling. Getting the materials up the cliff face would be challenging even with modern equipment, and for it to remain undiscovered for what must have been a very long time suggested this had happened long ago. As the sun began to set, Nathan knew he needed to descend before darkness made climbing dangerous. But he couldn't tear himself away just yet. He pulled out his flashlight and examined the door more carefully, looking for any sign of how it might open or what purpose it might serve. Near what would be the right edge of the door, his light caught something unusual, a small recess that didn't appear natural. Nathan leaned closer, shining his light directly into the depression. Inside, he could make out what looked like some kind of mechanism, though like nothing he recognized. "Should I?" he asked himself, fingers hovering near the recess. Common sense told him to leave it alone, to descend and return with others. Perhaps experts who could make sense of this discovery. But another part of him, the part that had driven him to explore remote mountains and caves across the world, urged him to press on. In the end, curiosity won. Nathan gently touched the mechanism, feeling it give slightly under his fingertips. He pressed harder and felt a distinct click. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, so quietly he almost missed it, came a soft hiss, the sound of a seal breaking. After who knew how long, the hair on Nathan's arms stood up. He quickly secured his position, making sure his anchors were solid. If the door was about to open, he didn't want to fall. Nothing happened for several long seconds. Then, with a low grinding sound, the door receded slightly into the cliff face and slid to one side, revealing a dark opening. A rush of stale, cold air flowed out, carrying a strange smell, metallic and unfamiliar. Nathan's flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing a tunnel extending into the cliff. The walls were smooth, unnaturally so, and covered in strange markings that resembled no language he had ever seen. The tunnel appeared to slope downward at a gentle angle, leading deeper into the mountain. Holy, Nathan whispered, unable to finish the thought. This was beyond anything he had expected to find. A door in a cliff was strange enough, but a tunnel with unknown writing? This wasn't just some old mining operation or natural cave. This was something else entirely. The sensible thing would be to close the door, climb down, and return with a proper team. Maybe contact the university or even the authorities. But the sun was setting, and Nathan knew that if he left now, he might never find this spot again. Or worse, someone else might discover it in the meantime. He made a quick decision. He would take a few pictures of the tunnel entrance, maybe venture just a few feet inside to document the markings, then seal it up and come back prepared. He snapped several photos of the doorway and the first few feet of the tunnel, making sure to capture the strange symbols on the walls. With trembling hands, from excitement, not fear, he told himself, Nathan adjusted his headlamp and took his first step into the tunnel. The temperature dropped immediately, and he could see his breath clouding in front of him. The air tasted strange, almost metallic. 5 feet in, the tunnel remained perfectly straight, the walls smooth as glass. The symbols continued, seemingly arranged in patterns or sequences. Nathan wished he had studied archaeology or linguistics. Maybe then he could make sense of them. He was about to turn back when his light caught something further down the tunnel. A wider space, perhaps a chamber of some kind. Just a quick look, he promised himself, then he would leave. 20 feet in, the tunnel suddenly widened, opening into a small room about 10 feet square. Unlike the tunnel, this space had furniture or something like it. Against one wall stood what appeared to be a control panel of some kind, covered in more symbols and what looked like buttons or switches. Nathan approached slowly, hardly daring to breathe. This was beyond incredible. The panel appeared to be made of the same material as the door, a metal-like substance that showed virtually no corrosion despite its apparent age. Without touching anything, Nathan took more pictures, trying to document every detail. Questions raced through his mind. Who built this? How old was it? What was its purpose? As he raised his camera for one final shot, his elbow accidentally brushed against the panel. Immediately, lights embedded in the ceiling flickered to life, bathing the room in a soft blue glow. Nathan jumped back, heart pounding. The lights, they still worked. How was that possible? A low hum filled the room, and the panel began to glow with an inner light. Symbols lit up in sequence, as if some program were initializing. Nathan stood frozen, equal parts terrified and amazed. Then from deeper within the mountain came a sound that made his blood run cold, a mechanical grinding as if enormous gears were turning for the first time in centuries. Time to go, Nathan said aloud, backing toward the tunnel entrance. Whatever he had awakened, he wasn't prepared to face it alone and ill-equipped. He hurried back through the tunnel, emerging onto the cliff face just as the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the canyon rim. With shaking hands, he pulled the door closed, hearing it seal with a soft click. As darkness fell completely, Nathan began his descent by headlamp, his mind racing with what he had discovered. He knew one thing for certain. He would be back. And soon. But next time, he wouldn't come alone. Nathan barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the strange door in the cliff and the glowing symbols on the control panel. By morning, he had made up his mind. He needed someone with expertise to help make sense of his discovery, someone he could trust not to steal credit or alert authorities before they understood what they were dealing with. He scrolled through his contacts until he found the number he was looking for. Dr. Eliza Hernandez wasn't just an archaeologist at the local university. She was also an old friend who had helped identify unusual rock carvings Nathan had photographed on a climb in Peru 3 years ago. If anyone could make sense of the symbols in the tunnel, it would be her. The call connected on the 4th ring. Nathan? It's been ages. Please tell me you found another mysterious carving that'll get my department head off my back about publication credits. Nathan smiled despite his exhaustion. Actually, I've found something that might make your entire career. But I need your word this stays between us until we figure out what we're dealing with. There was a pause on the line. That sounds ominous and intriguing. What exactly did you find? Not over the phone, Nathan replied, lowering his voice even though he was alone in his apartment. But I can tell you it involves a door where no door should exist, strange writing I've never seen before, and technology that shouldn't be possible given where I found it. Another pause, longer this time. Are you free today? My afternoon class got canceled. 2 hours later, they sat in a quiet corner of a coffee shop, heads bent over Nathan's phone as he showed Eliza the photos. Her expression shifted from skeptical to astonished as she swiped through the images. She searched for words. This doesn't make sense. The craftsmanship of the door, the precision of these symbols. They suggest an advanced civilization. But there's no record of any such culture in this region. Indigenous peoples here were primarily nomadic hunter-gatherers until European contact. Nathan nodded. That's why I called you. I thought maybe it was some secret government installation, but the technology doesn't look, modern. And why hide it halfway up a cliff? Eliza zoomed in on one of the photos showing the symbols on the tunnel wall. These are unlike any writing system I've ever seen. They're not pictographic like early Egyptian or Sumerian. They're not alphabetic. They almost look like mathematical notations, but not any mathematics I recognize. She looked up at Nathan, her dark eyes intense. We need to go back. I need to see this in person. That's what I was hoping you'd say. How's your climbing? Eliza grimaced. Rusty, very rusty. But for this, I'll manage. They spent the rest of the day gathering supplies. Nathan collected climbing gear while Eliza packed archaeological tools, measuring tapes, brushes, a digital microscope that connected to her tablet, sample collection kits, and a high-resolution camera with specialized lenses. They also packed extra water, food, and camping equipment. If they found something significant, they might want to stay overnight to document it properly. Early the next morning, they set out for Rattlesnake Canyon. The drive took nearly 2 hours, followed by a hike to the base of the cliff. As they prepared their climbing gear, Eliza looked up at the imposing rock face. And you're sure you can find the exact spot again? Nathan nodded, checking her harness connections. I marked the route on my GPS. Plus, I've got a pretty good memory for climbs. It's about 2/3 of the way up near that darker patch of rock. The climb was slower with Eliza. Though she had some experience, she wasn't as confident on the vertical surface as Nathan. He climbed slightly ahead, setting secure anchors and offering encouragement. By mid-afternoon, they reached the ledge where Nathan had made his discovery. There, he said, pointing to what now looked like just another section of the cliff face. The door had closed so perfectly that it was nearly invisible again. Eliza stared at the rock wall, confusion evident on her face. I don't see anything. Watch, Nathan said. He secured their position with additional anchors, then began clearing away the thin layer of dust and plant matter that had already started to accumulate on the door's surface. As he worked, the rectangular outline slowly became visible. Eliza's eyes widened. That's perfect geometric precision, perfect geometric. She reached out to touch the seam where the door met the surrounding rock. The tolerance here is incredible. Modern engineering would struggle to achieve this, especially in this environment. Nathan nodded. Wait until you see inside. He located the hidden mechanism and pressed it gently. Once again, there was a soft click followed by the hiss of an ancient seal breaking. The door slid sideways, revealing the dark tunnel beyond. Cool air rushed out, carrying that same metallic smell Nathan remembered. He switched on his headlamp and gestured for Eliza to do the same. Ready? She nodded, her expression a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Lead the way. They entered the tunnel together, the beams of their headlamps cutting through the darkness. Eliza moved slowly, examining the walls, ceiling, and floor with professional scrutiny. The precision is unbelievable, she murmured, running her gloved hand along the perfectly smooth wall. No tool marks, no seams. It's almost as if the tunnel was, melted through the rock somehow. She stopped to photograph the symbols, using a small scale bar to show their size. These are arranged in patterns, definitely. Some kind of language or code. She pointed to recurring groupings. See how these clusters repeat with variations? That suggests syntax, grammar. They continued deeper into the tunnel, passing the small room with the control panel that Nathan had accidentally activated. Eliza spent nearly 30 minutes documenting the panel, taking samples of the material with a specialized tool that removed microscopic amounts without damaging the surface. This isn't any alloy I'm familiar with, she said, examining a sample under her digital microscope. The molecular structure is unusual. I'd need a proper lab to analyze it fully. Beyond the control room, the tunnel continued downward at a steeper angle. They followed it cautiously, testing each step before committing their weight. After another 100 yards, the tunnel widened suddenly, opening into a vast chamber that took their breath away. The room was dome-shaped, at least 50 feet across and 30 feet high at its center. The walls were covered in more symbols, arranged in spiraling patterns that seemed to flow from the floor to the ceiling. In the center stood a raised platform with what appeared to be a control station of some kind, more advanced than the panel they had seen earlier. Most striking of all were 7 alcoves spaced evenly around the chamber's perimeter. Each contained what looked like a stone sarcophagus, its lid carved with symbols matching those on the walls. This is beyond anything in the archaeological record, Eliza whispered, her voice echoing slightly in the large space. This would rewrite history. Nathan approached one of the sarcophagi cautiously. Do you think there are bodies inside? Eliza shook, her head slowly. I don't know, but these don't look like traditional burial containers. See these fittings? She pointed to metal components embedded in the stone. These look more like, stasis chambers or something out of science fiction. They spent the next few hours meticulously documenting the chamber, taking hundreds of photos and small samples where possible. Eliza was particularly interested in a series of symbols that appeared repeatedly across all 7 sarcophagi. This could be a name or a designation, she suggested. It's the most frequently repeated sequence in the entire complex. As the day wore on, they became increasingly aware of strange phenomena in the chamber. Their equipment began to malfunction. Intermittently, Eliza's camera would shut off despite having a full battery, and Nathan's phone lost signal completely, despite showing full bars when they first entered. Most disturbing was the feeling that the symbols on the walls seemed to shift slightly when viewed from different angles, as if they were somehow 3-dimensional, despite being carved into flat surfaces. We should head back soon, Nathan said, checking his watch. It'll be dark outside in a couple of hours and I don't want to climb down in the dark. Eliza nodded reluctantly. You're right, but we need to come back. This changes everything we know about human history. Or, she hesitated, it might not be human at all. As they gathered their equipment, Nathan's headlamp caught something on the central platform, a small depression similar to the one that had opened the door. Eliza, look at this, he called. It looks like another activation mechanism. She joined him, examining the depression carefully. Similar design to the door opener, but more complex. See these patterns around it? They might be instructions or warnings. Should we try it? Nathan asked, his finger hovering over the mechanism. Eliza bit her lip, considering. It could be dangerous. We don't know what it does. But we might not get another chance, Nathan argued. What if someone else finds this place? What if it gets sealed up somehow? After a moment's hesitation, Eliza nodded. Do it, but be ready to run if necessary. Nathan took a deep breath and pressed the mechanism. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a low hum began to build throughout the chamber, and the symbols on the walls began to glow with a faint blue light. I think it's time to go, Eliza said, backing toward the tunnel entrance. Nathan nodded, but before they could move, a mechanical grinding sound came from the sarcophagi. Slowly, the stone lids began to slide open. The grinding sound of stone against metal filled the chamber as the lids of the sarcophagi began to slide open. Nathan grabbed Eliza's arm, pulling her toward the tunnel entrance. We need to go. Now, he shouted over the increasingly loud mechanical noise. They stumbled toward the exit, but before they could reach it, a blinding flash of blue light pulsed through the room. Nathan felt a strange sensation wash over him, like static electricity, but somehow deeper, as if it penetrated to his bones. Beside him, Eliza gasped and stumbled. What was that? She whispered, her voice shaking. Before Nathan could answer, a thin mist began rising from each of the 7 open sarcophagi. It glowed with the same blue light that had flashed moments before, swirling upward in spiraling patterns that seemed to match the symbols on the walls. Despite his fear, Nathan couldn't look away. The mist from each container began to take shape, forming vaguely humanoid figures that hovered above the stone boxes. They were tall, at least 7 feet, with elongated limbs and oddly shaped heads. But they weren't solid. Light passed through them as if they were made of nothing more than colored smoke. Are they holograms? Nathan whispered, his scientific mind struggling to make sense of what he was seeing. Eliza shook her head slowly, her eyes wide. I don't think so. Look how they're interacting with the air currents. They're physical, somehow. The misty figures began to move, drifting away from their containers toward the central platform. As they approached, symbols on the control panel lit up in sequence, responding to their presence. They're activating something, Eliza said, her voice barely audible. She had her phone out, recording despite her trembling hands. Nathan noticed that his own recording equipment had stopped working entirely. His camera's screen was blank, though the power light still glowed. Even his watch had frozen, the digital display showing the same time as when they'd first entered the chamber. The 7 figures converged at the central platform, their misty forms merging into a single swirling column of blue light. A high-pitched tone began to sound, rising in pitch until it was almost beyond the range of human hearing. Nathan winced, covering his ears. The tone changed, becoming a series of modulated sounds that reminded Nathan of whale songs he'd once heard while diving, complex, patterned, almost musical, but utterly alien. They're communicating, Eliza whispered in awe, or trying to. As if in response to her words, the blue column pulsed brighter, and the sounds changed again. This time, they seemed more structured, almost like words, though in no language either of them recognized. Nathan felt a strange pressure building in his head, as if something was trying to push thoughts directly into his mind. From Eliza's expression, she felt it too. Images flashed before his eyes, stars seen from unfamiliar angles, landscapes that couldn't exist on Earth, structures built at impossible scales. I think, Eliza said slowly, her voice strained. They're trying to show us something. Their home, maybe. Their history. The pressure increased, becoming almost painful. More images. A planet with rings like Saturn but colored deep red. Beings similar to the misty figures but solid. Working with technologies beyond anything Nathan could comprehend. Then disaster. A star exploding. Worlds burning, desperate flight. They're refugees. Nathan gasped as understanding flooded his mind. They came here to escape something that destroyed their world. Eliza nodded, tears streaming down her face from the pain and the alien emotions flooding through her consciousness. So long ago, they've been waiting, sleeping, The images shifted again, showing Earth as it might have looked millions of years ago. The beings constructing their hidden sanctuary, installing their sleeping chambers, setting the systems to watch and wait for something. But what were they waiting for? Nathan wondered aloud. As if in answer, new images appeared in his mind. Human civilization rising, falling, rising again. Cities growing, technology advancing. The beings watching, evaluating, judging. Then, images of potential futures. Humans reaching the stars or humans destroying themselves as the aliens' own civilization had been destroyed. They've been watching us, Eliza realized. Monitoring our progress, deciding if we're worthy, Nathan finished, or safe. The pressure in his head suddenly doubled, and he fell to his knees. Through watering eyes, he saw Eliza collapse beside him. The blue column pulsed faster, the sounds becoming more urgent. I think, Nathan gasped, fighting to stay conscious. They didn't expect to be awakened yet. We're not ready. They're not ready. The tone changed again, becoming a single, sustained note. The blue light began to dim, the misty figures separating from the central column and drifting back toward their containers. The pressure in Nathan's head eased slightly. They're going back to sleep, Eliza whispered, her voice hoarse. As the figures returned to their sarcophagi, the stone lids began to close once more. The glowing symbols on the walls dimmed and the humming sound that had filled the chamber since they activated the mechanism began to fade. With the last of the figures contained, the chamber fell silent. The only light came from their headlamps, which had begun working again. Nathan helped Eliza to her feet. They stood in stunned silence for several minutes, trying to process what they had witnessed. Did that really happen? Nathan finally asked, his voice unsteady. Eliza nodded slowly. It happened, but she checked her phone. The recording failed. No video, no audio, just static. Nathan checked his own equipment with the same result. His camera had recorded nothing but electronic noise, and his watch was working again, showing that almost an hour had passed since they activated the mechanism. We need to document everything, Eliza said, slipping immediately into scientist mode despite her shaking hands. Write down everything we saw, everything we felt, everything we understood, before we forget or convince ourselves it wasn't real. They spent another hour in the chamber, taking new photographs and making detailed notes about their experience. The sarcophagi remained firmly closed, and no amount of investigation revealed how to open them again, perhaps a safety measure triggered by their premature awakening of the sleeping beings. What do we do with this? Nathan asked as they finally prepared to leave. Who do we tell? Will anyone even believe us without evidence? Eliza was quiet for a long moment, staring at the sealed containers. I don't know, she finally admitted. This changes everything. History, archaeology, possibly our understanding of human origins and development. But without proof. We have the photographs of the chamber, the symbols, Nathan pointed out. That's something. Yes, but nothing of what we experienced, Eliza countered. Nothing of the beings themselves. She sighed heavily. And I'm not sure we should share this widely, at least not yet. Think about what they showed us. They've been evaluating humanity, judging whether we're safe, whether we're worthy of whatever knowledge they possess. And we clearly didn't pass the test yet, Nathan said quietly. Or they wouldn't have gone back to sleep. Eliza nodded. We need to be careful. Select colleagues we trust, people who can help us understand what we've found without sensationalizing it or exploiting it. As they made their way back through the tunnel toward the exit, Nathan felt a strange reluctance to leave. Despite the terror and pain of the encounter, he felt drawn to the mystery of the beings and their purpose. We'll come back, he promised, himself silently. With more equipment, more expertise, we'll be ready next time. At the tunnel entrance, they paused to look back one last time. In the beam of their headlamps, the symbols on the walls seemed to shimmer slightly, as if still active in some subtle way. I have a feeling, Eliza said softly, that they're still watching us. that this was a test, to see how we'd react, what we'd do with what we found. Nathan nodded slowly. And it's not over. They stepped out onto the cliff face, the door sliding shut behind them with a soft click. As they began their descent, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the canyon, neither spoke much. Both were lost in thoughts of what they had witnessed and what it might mean for humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. What they didn't notice, as they carefully made their way down the cliff, was the small device now attached to the back of each of their necks. A flat disc no larger than a dime, the same color as their skin, bearing tiny versions of the symbols they had seen in the chamber. The beings might have returned to their sleep, but they had not left Nathan and Eliza entirely unmarked by the encounter. The test, it seemed, was just beginning. 3 weeks passed since their encounter in the cliff chamber, and nothing in Nathan's life felt normal anymore. The dream started the very first night. Vivid visions of stars and planets he couldn't name, of cities built from materials that glowed from within, of beings that moved through walls as easily as through air. Each morning, he woke exhausted, his mind buzzing with fragments of knowledge he couldn't possibly possess. He met with Eliza regularly, comparing notes and experiences. She was having the same dreams, the same strange flashes of insight about things she'd never studied. "It's like they left something behind in us," she said one evening, as they sat in her university office after hours, blinds drawn, and voices low. "Some kind of, I don't know, mental footprint." Nathan rubbed the back of his neck, feeling the small bump that had appeared there days after their expedition. He'd thought it was just a mosquito bite at first, but it never faded. Eliza had one too, in exactly the same spot. "Have you told anyone else about what we found?" Nathan asked, though he already knew the answer. They had agreed to keep their discovery secret until they understood it better. Eliza shook her head. "No, but I've been researching similar accounts, strange chambers found in remote locations, unexplained symbols, even reports of mist beings. Most are dismissed as hoaxes or hallucinations, but now I'm not so sure." She pulled up a file on her computer and turned the screen toward Nathan. "Look at this. A cave painting from France estimated to be 17,000 years old. The image showed humanoid figures surrounding what appeared to be elongated beings made of wavy lines remarkably similar to the misty entities they had seen. And this," she continued, showing another image. "Found in a tomb in Egypt. Archaeologists thought it was just an unusual hieroglyph, but look at the pattern. The symbol was unmistakably similar to the ones they had seen on the walls of the chamber. They've been visiting Earth for thousands of years," Nathan whispered. "Monitoring us, like we saw in those visions." Eliza nodded grimly. "And I think they've left markers in people before, people who encountered them. Throughout history, there are accounts of individuals who suddenly possessed knowledge they couldn't have acquired normally. Scientists, artists, philosophers who made inexplicable leaps in understanding." Nathan felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you saying we've been chosen for what?" Before Eliza could answer, her phone buzzed. She checked the screen and frowned. "It's Dr. Chen from the physics department. I sent him some theoretical questions. Nothing specific about our experience, just some ideas about matter states that might explain what we saw. He says he needs to meet urgently." 20 minutes later, they were in Dr. Chen's lab. The physicist was a small, energetic man with perpetually rumpled clothes and a reputation for brilliance in quantum mechanics. He closed the door behind them and spoke without preamble. "Whatever you've stumbled onto, it's attracted attention. 2 men claiming to be from the Department of Energy were here yesterday, asking about my recent correspondence with you." Eliza paled. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing of substance. I said we occasionally consult on dating techniques for archaeological finds." He leaned closer. "But they knew about your expedition to Rattlesnake Canyon. They had satellite images." Nathan felt his stomach drop. "How is that possible? We told no one." Dr. Chen shrugged. "The why is your problem. I'm more interested in the what. Your questions about matter existing in multiple states simultaneously, about consciousness as a wave function. These aren't typical archaeological inquiries. Eliza and Nathan exchanged glances. Finally, Eliza spoke. We found something. Something that doesn't fit any known historical or scientific framework. She described their discovery in broad terms. The door, the chamber, the symbols. She left out the misty beings and the mental connection, not ready to share those details even with someone they trusted. Dr. Chen listened intently, asking occasional questions about the technology they had observed. When Eliza finished, he was quiet for a long moment. This may connect to something I've been tracking for years, he finally said. Quantum anomalies, localized disturbances in space-time that don't follow standard physical laws. They're rare and usually brief, but there's a cluster of them around Rattlesnake Canyon dating back decades. He pulled up a map on his computer, showing pinpoints of light scattered across the region. Each point represents an anomaly detected by various instruments over the years. Most were dismissed as equipment malfunctions, but the pattern is too consistent. Nathan stared at the map. They're arranged in a spiral centered on the cliff where we found the door. Dr. Chen nodded. Exactly. Whatever you found, it's been affecting the surrounding area for a long time. And you say it appeared to be some kind of monitoring station? That was our impression, Eliza confirmed cautiously. Monitoring what, though? Dr. Chen mused. And why there? What's special about that location? Nathan had been wondering the same thing. The canyon wasn't particularly unique geologically or historically. It wasn't near any major fault lines or notable natural features. Unless the aquifer, he said suddenly. One of the largest underground water sources in the region runs directly beneath that area. If someone wanted to monitor the development of life on Earth, access to water would be essential. Dr. Chen looked thoughtful. It's possible. Or perhaps there's something in the mineral composition of the area that was useful to them. Without more data, we can only speculate. As they left the physics building, Nathan noticed a black SUV parked across the street, 2 men in suits sitting inside. He nudged Eliza and nodded toward the vehicle. We're being watched, he murmured. Eliza glanced at the SUV and quickened her pace slightly. We need to get back to the chamber. If someone else is interested in it, we need to document everything before they find it. That's too dangerous, Nathan argued. If the government is involved, all the more reason to hurry, Eliza insisted. Think about what those beings showed us, the knowledge they possess, their technology. Do you want that falling into the hands of people who might weaponize it? Nathan couldn't argue with that logic. The images he'd seen of worlds destroyed, civilizations collapsed. They carried a warning he couldn't ignore. They made plans quickly, deciding to leave that night. They would take a different route to the canyon, approach the cliff from an unexpected angle, and bring better equipment to document everything. As they packed their gear in Nathan's apartment, he noticed something strange about his reflection in the bathroom mirror. His eyes seemed different, the irises containing tiny flecks of blue light that hadn't been there before. He blinked hard, and the effect disappeared. It's happening to you too, isn't it? Eliza asked from the doorway. She stepped into the light, and Nathan saw the same momentary blue flicker in her eyes. What's happening to us? He whispered. Eliza touched the small bump on the back of her neck. I think they left something behind, not just memories or knowledge, but something physical. Something that's changing us. The drive to Rattlesnake Canyon took 3 hours. They abandoned the car miles from their destination and hiked the rest of the way, using a different trail than before. Nathan felt strange as they approached, a growing sense of connection to the place, as if it were calling to him. Do you feel that? He asked Eliza as they neared the base of the cliff. She nodded, her expression a mixture of fascination and fear. It's like a pull. And the dreams were stronger last night, more vivid, more detailed. I think whatever they put in us is activating as we get closer. The climb was easier than Nathan remembered, his hands and feet finding holds without conscious thought, as if the knowledge had been implanted in his muscles. Eliza seemed similarly enhanced, scaling sections that had given her trouble before with newfound confidence. They reached the ledge with the hidden door, just as dawn broke over the canyon rim. But when Nathan cleared away the dust to reveal the seam where the door should be, his heart sank. The door was gone. The rock face was solid, with no sign that an opening had ever existed. "No," Eliza whispered, running her hands over the smooth stone. "It was here. We didn't imagine it." Nathan pressed against the rock, searching for the hidden mechanism, but found nothing. It was as if the entire structure had vanished, or been moved. "They knew we were coming back," he said quietly. "They relocated it." Eliza's face fell, but then her expression changed, her eyes widening as she stared at something over Nathan's shoulder. "Nathan," she said, her voice barely audible. "Look." He turned slowly. Hovering in the air several feet from the cliff edge was a small blue light, pulsing gently. As they watched, it expanded, forming into a misty figure similar to those they had seen in the chamber. But this one was smaller, more defined, almost human in its proportions. The figure raised a limb, pointing away from the cliff toward the deeper canyon. Then it vanished, leaving behind only a faint blue trail in the air like a path leading into the unknown. Nathan and Eliza looked at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. "They want us to follow," Eliza said. Nathan nodded, feeling the small bump on his neck pulse warmly, as if activating. "I think this was the plan all along. We're not just witnesses anymore. We're messengers," Eliza finished. Without another word, they began to gather their gear, preparing to follow the path laid out for them, a path that would lead them deeper into the mystery and further from the world they had known. Nathan and Eliza followed the faint blue trail deeper into Rattlesnake Canyon. The path led them away from established hiking routes, through narrow passages between towering rock formations, and across dry creek beds that rarely saw human footprints. "Do you think we're being led into a trap?" Nathan asked, his voice low, despite the empty wilderness around them. Eliza shook her head. "No, I think we're being tested again. They want to see if we trust enough to follow, if we're curious enough to continue seeking answers." The blue trail grew brighter as the day progressed, pulsing gently, like a living thing. By mid-afternoon, they reached a section of the canyon Nathan had never explored before, a narrow ravine with walls so steep they blocked most of the sunlight, casting the path in deep shadow. "Look," Eliza said, pointing ahead. The blue trail ended at what appeared to be a solid rock wall. But as they approached, they saw it. Another door, identical to the one they had found in the cliff face, but at ground level and partially hidden by scrub brush. Nathan felt the bump on his neck grow warm again. Without consciously deciding to, he reached out and pressed his palm against the rock beside the door. The hidden mechanism activated immediately, responding to something in him rather than to physical pressure. The door slid open silently, revealing a tunnel that sloped gently downward. Blue light emanated from symbols on the walls, illuminating their path without the need for headlamps. "They've prepared this for us," Eliza whispered, her voice filled with wonder. They entered cautiously, the door closing behind them with a soft hiss. The tunnel was different from the one they had explored before, wider, smoother, and inscribed with new symbols that seemed to shift and change as they walked past, as if responding to their presence. After walking for what felt like miles, the tunnel opened into a vast underground space that took their breath away. It was a perfect hemisphere, at least 100 feet in diameter, with a domed ceiling covered in points of light that mimicked the night sky. The floor was smooth white stone that seemed to glow from within. In the center of the chamber stood 7 tall crystalline structures arranged in a circle. Each was roughly humanoid in shape but abstract, more like artistic representations than actual figures. They glowed with inner light, blue, green, violet, colors that shifted and pulsed in patterns too complex to follow. As Nathan and Eliza approached the circle, the crystalline figures began to emit a soft humming sound that resonated through the chamber. The sound organized itself into patterns similar to the communication they had experienced before, but clearer now, almost comprehensible. Nathan felt the strange pressure building in his mind again, but it wasn't painful this time. It felt more like a door opening, allowing something new to enter. Images flooded his consciousness, but not random fragments as before. This was structured, intentional communication. He saw the history of the beings, their world, their civilization spanning millions of years, their mastery of science beyond human comprehension. They call themselves the Watchers, Eliza said beside him, her voice distant as she too received the transmission. They've been here for millions of years. Nathan nodded slowly. Not just Earth. Thousands of worlds across the galaxy, observing, recording, preserving knowledge. More images. The Watchers arriving on Earth during its early formation, establishing, monitoring stations deep within the planet's crust, watching as life evolved from single cells to complex organisms, observing but never interfering, collecting data for a vast archive of planetary development. They're scientists, Nathan murmured, the ultimate long-term research project. But then came images of disaster, a force moving through the galaxy, destroying worlds, erasing knowledge. The Watchers' homeworld falling to this unnamed threat. Their desperate plan to preserve what they could of their civilization and knowledge. They're not just observers anymore, Eliza said, her voice breaking with the emotion flowing through the connection. They're refugees, the last of their kind. The final series of images explained their purpose now. The Watchers had chosen Earth, as one of several worlds with intelligent life that might someday be ready to receive their knowledge. They had placed markers throughout human history, subtle influences, seeds of ideas, gentle nudges toward discovery. And now they had chosen Nathan and Eliza as direct conduits, humans who had demonstrated courage, curiosity, and the capacity to understand. The pressure in Nathan's mind shifted, becoming a question, unspoken but clear. Would they accept this role? Would they become bridges between human knowledge and the vast archive the Watchers had accumulated over eons? Nathan looked at Eliza. Her eyes now glowed visibly blue, matching the light from the crystalline figures. He knew his own eyes must look the same. If we say yes, he said quietly, we can never go back to our old lives. Eliza nodded. But think of what humanity could learn. Technologies to heal the planet, to expand beyond Earth, to understand the universe in ways we never imagined. Or weapons, Nathan countered. Knowledge that could destroy us if misused. You saw what happened to their civilization. The pressure in their minds intensified slightly, not pushing for an answer, but offering more information. They saw the safeguards the Watchers had designed. The knowledge would not be given all at once, but gradually, as humanity demonstrated readiness. And Nathan and Eliza would not be alone. Others had been chosen throughout history, creating a network of human conduits prepared to guide this process. It's already begun, Eliza realized. The dreams, the new knowledge appearing in our minds, they've already started the transfer. Nathan took a deep breath. The rational part of his mind, the climbing instructor who planned routes meticulously, who never took unnecessary risks, told him to refuse, to run, to return to the safety of his normal life. But another part, the mere part that had always driven him to explore, to seek new challenges, to push beyond known limits, whispered that this was the ultimate journey. I accept, he said finally. The words seemed to echo in the chamber, though he'd spoken barely above a whisper. Beside him, Eliza nodded. I accept as well. The humming from the crystalline figures intensified, the light growing brighter. Nathan felt something shift within him, the small device on his neck warming, then seeming to dissolve, spreading through his body like liquid light. Knowledge began to flow into his mind, not in a flood, but in a carefully controlled stream. Mathematical equations that revealed the underlying structure of reality, the true nature of gravity and how it could be manipulated, the relationship between consciousness and matter. Through it all, he remained aware of Eliza beside him, experiencing the same transformation. The process lasted hours or perhaps days. Time seemed meaningless in that underground chamber. When it finally ended, the light from the crystalline figures dimmed to a soft glow. Nathan felt different. His mind expanded, filled with knowledge he would spend years, perhaps decades, fully understanding. He looked at Eliza. Her appearance hadn't changed, but something in her eyes reflected the transformation within, a depth of awareness that hadn't been there before. "What now?" he asked, his voice sounding strange to his own ears. One final image appeared in their minds, a map showing similar stations hidden around the world, and others who had been chosen as they had. People they would need to find, to form the network that would gradually introduce the Watcher's knowledge to humanity. "We begin the work," Eliza said simply. They left the underground chamber the way they had come, the door sealing behind them with a finality that marked the division between their old lives and what lay ahead. The blue trail was gone, but they didn't need it anymore. The knowledge of where to go next was already within them. As they hiked back toward civilization, Nathan noticed how differently he perceived the world now. He could see patterns in the rock formations that revealed their age and composition. He understood the complex interplay of forces that had shaped the canyon over millions of years. Even the stars overhead seemed different, not just points of light but navigational markers in a vast cosmic map he was now beginning to comprehend. Two black SUVs waited at the trailhead when they emerged from the canyon. Men in dark suits stood beside them, their postures tense but not threatening. "Dr. Hernandez, Mr. Webb," one of them called. "We'd like to speak with you about what you found in Rattlesnake Canyon." Nathan and Eliza exchanged glances. They had expected this. Government agencies monitoring unusual activities, especially anything that might have scientific or military applications. But what these men didn't understand was that the knowledge they sought couldn't be taken by force or contained in any human facility. It existed now within Nathan and Eliza, protected by safeguards beyond human technology. "Of course," Eliza said smoothly. "We'd be happy to discuss our archaeological findings." As they approached the vehicles, Nathan felt a new confidence. This too was part of the path, navigating human institutions, identifying those who could be trusted with portions of the knowledge, gradually preparing humanity for a greater understanding of its place in the universe. The work would take lifetimes, perhaps generations, but the Watchers had waited millions of years. They understood patience better than any human could. Nathan looked up at the night sky one last time before entering the vehicle. Somewhere up there, other worlds waited, other civilizations following, their own paths. And one day, if humanity proved worthy, Earth would join a community of knowledge that spanned the stars. The journey had only just begun.